Hey y'all, today we're going to be working on a Penn 7500 SS. Show you how to break it down and how to put it back together. Okay, first we'll start with removing the drag knob. This reel is missing the silent dog lever and corresponding screw. And the bail wire is bent slightly on this as well. I don't believe this has been serviced at all, just based on how it feels inside. It feels pretty dry, but the gears are good. So I'm going to take my time with these screws here. So first I'll start with undoing the retaining spring for the drag. To do that, I simply remove this spring right here, holding on to it just in case it flies away, and just pulling at the drag. It's not a terrible rail, just I don't think it's been serviced. Yeah, so it looks okay. We're missing a drag, so we'll be replacing those things. Let's move that over here. Next, we go ahead and remove the click tongue. Hold on to the spring while I unscrew these things. Again, springs fly, and we don't want anything flying. To remove that, you simply pull it up off the post. And let's see how this looks. It looks pretty good. Excuse me. And that'll be it for the spool. I'll remove this line later on. So now we can go and work on the rest of the reel. And like I said, I'm going to be pretty careful with these screws. These have a tendency to just lock up in there. This one feels okay, that's good. And now to remove this one, we simply unscrew it. But we're going to need to use some force on it. Don't want to strip the plating on this, so I'm going to just use something to buffer it so it doesn't strip too badly, if at all. That wasn't too bad. Now I'm going to loosen up the rest of these screws here and get these taken out. Yeah, see, these are pretty tight. So I have to, so when you're removing these things, you kind of want to rock back and forth. If you feel a lot of resistance, just stop and add some lubrication to it. Let it soak. Otherwise, what you're doing is excuse me, twisting the screw inside, and eventually it'll just snap off on you. Let's see if it comes off. It's not bad. That's the bearing that came from inside right there. Okay, so to remove the spool shaft, we're going to have to get to the crosswind. To the crosswind block right there. We'll loosen these screws. Then I just twist to pull out the main shaft. Like so. I know that comes. Let's go ahead and take off the thrust washer off of this. And to remove the rotor, we have to remove this nut right here. And this should just pull straight up, which it does. And we're going to finish working on the rotor at this point. And that's that for that portion of it. You can get these set to the side. And let's undo the line roller assembly. And that's that for the bail wire assembly. Now we can go to work on the rest of the reel. So this can just pull right out on these, on the 7500, the main gear can. Based on the way it felt, should be good. Okay, so we'll pop out the crosswind block, the crosswind gear, and I'll pop out this bearing on this side, so we just get it out. Looks like a little bit of rust there, but it feels fine. We'll check it out later on. All right, so now we can get to the top of this and remove the dog and the ratchets, or the ratchet and the dogs. And I'm just going real slow with these things just to make sure I don't strip or shear off any of these screws in there. It should pop straight up, but it may not. And it does, which is good. So it wasn't as bad of a shape as we originally thought it might be, in terms of maintenance or just being cared for. It just wasn't excuse me, just wasn't serviced at all, or hadn't been serviced in a while. You can see that by all the lack of grease inside there. So to remove the eccentric, simply push that up from the bottom, pull out the spring, and now we can remove this liner right here. Same for this. We're going to remove the screw first, pop that lever down, push up, and out comes this lever, this eccentric. And then we remove the liner from this as well. And that is that for the main housing. Now I'm going to try to break down the handle. It may be too stuck in there, and I'll have to add some oil to it and let it soak for a while. But let's see if we can get this. And never squeeze on this and try to unscrew it, because you're essentially locking this in place. You're putting a lot of pressure on the shaft inside there for the screw. So leave it open like that and just try to remove it. This one was not bad either. This is one of the things that does get stuck on these reels and makes it very difficult coming out, because it just kind of gets corroded in there. But they actually oiled this pretty good, which is good. So they maintain the handle, but not necessarily the reel itself. Okay, that's how you break down a Penn 7500 SS. I'll come back to you after this is all cleaned up and show you how to put it all back together again. Okay, and we're back. Let's get this Penn 7500 SS put back together. I'll start with the spool and put on the click assembly. Let's get our pieces. We'll take our spring, get it attached to the click tongue. Get our washer there. Set it on top. Like so. Get our screw in place. And just move it over the hole and screw it in. I don't screw it down the entire way yet. I'm going to add some grease, some oil to right here. And then I'll kind of work that back and forth to get the grease in there. The oil in there. Then I can lock it down. Now we can take a pin, toothpick, basically whatever you have to pull this spring over and attach it to the post. Right here. Like so. Just make sure it's seated all the way down or inside the slot that's on the post so it stays put. Now we can add a little more grease here, a little more oil here. We're just going to flick this back and forth to work it in. So now we can do the drags. It's the new drags here. And we're gonna use some drag grease on these. First goes the octagonal metal washer, then the Teflon washer. Next will be a keyed washer. There's a thin and a thick washer. The thick one goes on, there's a thick and a thin keyed washer. The thick one goes below or on the bottom, and the thin one will go on top. So we put after the Teflon washer, we put the first keyed washer. Adding some dry grease to this. It's only a light coat. And I'll do this one while I'm here. Next will be the octagonal washer, the final fiber washer, and then the last keyed washer. Now you can take your retaining ring and get it in place. Hold on to it while you do it, just make sure that it's slotted in the groove that's inside the spool. Especially with new drags, it will be a tight fit. So I'm double checking this. Looks good. We're gonna find out. Yep, we're good. Okay, now on to the rotor and the bail assembly. Alright, so for the bail assembly, or for the rotor, I'm going to add grease to a few places here before we start. One will be here. And here. I'll add oil to here. Work that in. And to here. Okay. Now add some grease to the line roller, or to this portion of the bail wire. I don't use oil, I use grease. On with the bushing. A little more grease here. On with the line roller. Now I can add some grease on the inside where the lock washer sits on the bail arm. And on this side where the line roller washer sits, as well as on the line roller washer itself. Now we can get our lock washer, get our screw through it. If I can grab it. Balance this on there, like so. And screw it in place, but not completely tight. Now we'll take our bail spring here, and we're going to insert the short prong, not the long. The short prong goes into the rotor. I added a little bit of oil to the end of it. Set that in place like that. Add a little oil to the tip. Sorry, a little grease to the tip. And now we can set our, hold on, back up 1 second, guys. We have to get our line roller on there, or our line roller washer on there. Now we can get our bail arm put on. And I like to drop the bail arm below the notch, this notch right here. So I can get it started, the screw started in place, and then I will lift it up or raise it above the notch. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in a sec. Now it's slot in the groove, lift it up, turn it so that the peg on the bail arm is on the proper side of that notch, and screw it down in place. Now we can finish greasing the bail. Now we can get on the bail cover. I'm sorry, the bail spring cover. Screw this side in. And then tighten down our bail, our line roller assembly. Okay, that's good. Now let's get to the big part of it. I'm going to attach this trip bumper first while I'm here. Adding a little bit of grease on the inside on this post. Don't over tighten these things. You can risk cracking the trip bumper itself. And now I'm going to put on the Eccentric. This will be for the silent dog and for the click dog. You know, before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and put the pinion in. Let's just rewind 1 sec. Let's get the pinion put in there. And then we can work on the rest. So I got my pinion out. I'm going to grease inside here where the bearing sits. Grease down there lightly on that bracket. And now we can grease our pinion up. I don't add grease to inside there, into the hole. I'll add oil to the spool shaft. Drop our pinion in place. Get our bearing. Get that in place. Then we can put on our bearing cover. Now we can put our spacer, and next we can attach our eccentrics. Take note that the size on the liners for the eccentrics are different for either side. The upper eccentric on this side, the diameter is smaller on the liner than the click dog side. So I'll get the click dog liner put in. I'm going to grease this down a little bit. And then I'm going to take one of the springs, attach some grease to the raised point, stick it in, and just get it set in place like this. And I'm going to use a screwdriver to turn this up while I turn this to get that set in place like that. Now we can add our lever. And our screw. Now we can do the other side. I do a little bit of grease to this. Same process, add some grease to the tip of the spring, get in the hole, down through the slot, and fit it into the groove right there. Like so. And I typically leave the liner out on this side until I get this cylinder through, because I feel like it just pushes it out all the time. Now we're going to get our lever on there. Now we can grease the springs. Now we can stick on our dogs. I'll lightly grease all of these parts here. For the ratchet, I don't grease the teeth, but I do add a little bit of grease to the outside. For the dog, I do add some grease to the leaves here, in between the leaves, like so. And I'll start with the click dog side first. I just found that it helps keep the ratchet in place, so I can put on the silent dog. So to do the click dog, I take the spring. It has a raised end and it has a straight end. The raised end will be going through this hole right here. You can also put it on the outside, on the back side of the dog itself. I like to put it through the hole, like so. get it on there, and I start with the straight end on the back side of this post here, and then I'll load it after I get it screwed in place. Okay, so now I got that screwed down in there. I'm gonna screw down a little bit more. Take this prong from this side, brace it over to the other side of the post so we can load it. And now the spring is loaded. Like so. Now we can get our dog and our ratchet assembled. I leave this open to rest it in there like that. And I do leave this click dog engaged. It just helps seat it properly, or seat the silent dog properly. And now we can do our transfer lever. For the transfer lever, I'll add a little bit of grease. A little bit of oil here. Rest that on the post like so. Add a little more oil. And when I say a little, I mean a little, not a lot on these things. And just kind of work it in there. Okay, good. I'm going to add some oil to the inside here. And just kind of work that in. That's for the bearing, because I didn't put any on when I installed it, or when I put it back in. And now we can go with the side cover. I'm going to grease where the bearing sits. Pop the bearing in, and on with the bearing cover. And now we can take the oil and grease here. And we can do the same for the back side. Now we can do the crosswind gear and get this spool put back together. I'm going to grease inside where the crosswind gear sits. Then I'll grease the crosswind gear. Just drop it in place. I drop it in place with the prong sitting on this side, kind of at an angle. Then I'll take my block, and I'll add a generous amount of grease to the inside here, this groove. Then grease the rest of the block lightly. Like so. Drop that in place, pull it down. And now we can get our main gear and do the same process. Now we can set our our main gear in place, like so. And we're almost done. Take our spool shaft oil it. I add oil here, not grease, just because I found that the grease kind of helps gunk build up if I put it on the shaft. I will put some grease here where the crosswind block meets the shaft. Now I'll put the rotor on. Did we put grease here yet? No, we didn't. So we're going to add some grease to the inside of the rotor here. So it doesn't get locked on if it's just sitting in the water or something and it doesn't get serviced. On with the rotor. On with the washer. And let's get it screwed in place. This one has 2 beveled edges. Both sides are beveled, so it doesn't matter how you put it on. I'm going to loosen this up a little bit. So we can move this. Okay. And I like to have it this big. I like to have the eccentric open so I can go back and forth with this, so I don't lock myself up with the spool shaft when I'm trying to put it inside. Now that's in. I'm looking for the groove. Found it. And this just sits in there like that. Now while I'm here, I can just put the thrust washer on to the spool shaft. And now we can work on the handle. For the handle, I add grease inside here. And right here where the pin or the pivot screw goes through. For this, I like to add oil to it. I do use grease sometimes, but I prefer using oil on this, on the pivot. Get the pivot in place. Get our screw. Just push that through and screw it in. You'll notice that the grease comes out the other side. That just helps line the inside of the threading with grease. Add some oil to here. I rarely add it to here, but I will this time because this looks a little worn, and we'll add some in here as well. Just gonna work that in. That's good. Now we can come back to this, and I'm going to grease the holes where the screws will sit. One here, one there, and especially one here. This is the one that tends to get corroded most of the time, if they're going to get corroded or locked in. Now I'm going to grease the outside of the main gear. And for this one, I added a shim for the main gear because it was shifting a little bit. Just gives a much better feel. Much better feel when you're cranking the reel. Now we can put on our handle. Get our spool on there. Remember, these drags will feel a little tight because they're new. And there you have it. That's how you put together a Penn 7500 SS. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time.